Hello everyone. The title of today's episode is very gracefully, Imagination is not imagination. What that means is Mr.Within has playfully suggested how this nation is to some degree terra incognita. What that means is when we look at the depths of our abstraction, form seems to be its greatest inspiration. You see, when I look at the study of imagination, we are working with something we cannot see, but it is present. So as long as we want to try to justify with things that we are seeing, we will not understand the unseen. So how we can understand the unseen is not to go chase some fantasy behind a door that the external world provides, but to some degree see that from the form you are, you just look at yourself. What that means is the mystic's approach is one where there are no limitations in his search. You who are a seeker of the life that seeks you, your path is not something to hold. It is not something to document. It is not something to examine. It is not something to try to find the missing piece to a puzzle. It is an awareness to the whole image, which is implied in every minute aspect of your manifestation. What that means is, to some degree, we have the physical plane, and this is nothing to ignore. Do you know? What that means is your externality should be handled very efficiently, and you should, Mr.Within finds, you should be selfless in your awareness of all the selves that are passing through. What that means is your 5-year-old self, your 10-year-old self, your 15-year-old self, your 20-year-old self, all have had different views. And so you have been a transition of identification with the environments that have become real to you with your simple step into complexity. But you must not also try to think that you know, because when you know, that is when rationality not pukes but rationality constantly puts something there that is actually nothing. So what that means is we can all write on the chalkboard, but in an instant that kid after class can come and erase it. So the understanding is through existential emptiness, and you seeing that it is not about you trying to mold manifestation in a certain way that pleases you, but rather seeing that you are here to see what is alive. And in seeing what is alive, the concept of life will dissolve into direct experience. So the mystic was, in a sense, being observant and being such a seer of thought to see how sensory perception is molded in what is put in front of the spotlight of attention of the being. So if you were to move a spotlight, you would see how the attention would work. So similarly, that is the focus that has kept the reality in front of you real. But you must not try to be too firm and too serious in a world that's playfully and infinitely changing. What that means is, regardless of how much seriously I think I have to do something, at the end of the day I look at the world and I see I have changed based on whatever amount I'm considering, but the whole world is changing. It was changing before my physical manifestation, and it will change after my physical manifestation. And when there is an intelligence that is self-aware of change, it is untouched. Man has had his salvation the minute he opened his eyes in his eternal hue. Because the temporal nature of reality must be observed by you. Because if it is not, then suffering will seem to be a byproduct of your world. But you must have first a clear vision of your world. And that means you must observe how externality is present through an internal phenomena, but this internal phenomena never needs an external. So what that means is we are, as an effect, looking and wondering what happened to the cause, and some people are saying there was a big bang, you know. Others are saying it was a voice. We begin to see the nature of human contemplation is to find itself through its ignorance. What that means are our bad habits are bad in one dynamic and context of vision. In other dynamics, our bad habits are actions, and actions will lead always to greater actions when the vision is there. What that means is all those kids in the classroom are wondering what the teacher's going to teach. It's the teacher that comes and writes down the title, and we're like, oh shit, we got vision, you know. So we know what's going on. So you need to give yourself that clarity and see that you cannot wait for the teachers to give you the answers. What that means is in your acceptance of a guru, that means you have given externality an ability to tell you what's real rather than your direct experience, which is an awareness of externality, which perhaps may be said is the beauty of what is within you beyond time and space. And so this is consciousness realizing its absolute being. So if you're considering how you've been thinking about things based on a comparison in regards to doing, so you're saying, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, you're beginning to realize everything that's being done is being in a place. And this place, how are you receiving it? You're receiving it from a sense of here and now. And as you come to the sense of here and now, the self-talk fades. What that means is, what I found very graceful about spending a lot of time in nature was that there was a silence that communicated in very profound ways. What that means is when someone goes in nature, and let's say you go sit down and be still and, in a sense, become the spark in the mystic's gaze and see the wonders of the yogi and the beauty of meditation, you find that it is in sitting down and being still and silent and just aware of your life that you begin to even calibrate what is valuable to you. You might be being conditioned in thinking that things are valuable and, you know, certain objective views are valuable, but you must begin to see who is holding this value. Who is the seer? This is the wisdom of the sage. Who is the seer? What that means is, before you're asking wisdom about wisdom, who is asking? And wow, one of the greatest opponents of man is the word who. Because once man transcended that opponent, once man went into that metamorphosis after its observance in the cocoon, its wings were given in the action that moves. So your greatest movement in this life is how sincerely and honestly you're allowing yourself to be simple clarity, as simple as perhaps how the last ripple on a pond shows a sediment that reflects the limitless sky. When it is suggested that imagination is not imagination, it is that in your moment of deep self-contemplation or just simple awareness as life, you are seeing that ideology doesn't have to be so firm, because the sense of self is not one to be firm. What that means is we are constantly thinking we're this kind of person, we're that kind of person, we have this kind of personality, we have this kind of personality, but we're not realizing that is a creation we bring in regards to an agreement to social norms. But outside of social norms, the comfort we have with ourselves is boundless. So you must be aware of existential comfort in the sense that it's boundless, because you are a moment of existence. You are a moment of experience. There is a value here. There is a spark here. You are an emanation. Every form is an emanation of this profound spark. And it seems at that moment when man looked around this vast cosmos, and he was like, I'm so small, and there is such an unknown. How does man get to know the unknown? And he began to look at what he knows, and he saw that it has to change. Your sense of knowledge and what even knowledge conceptually means has to change, and you must directly and experientially activate this for yourself. What that means is remember who you are, and if you can talk about it, you must still bask in the stillness and silence of the wild. Do not think you're here to live only in the ways that you see options in. You know, sometimes we're given options because we only recognize them based on our conditioning like that, you know, but we must follow the intuition, because the intuition is that part of you which cannot lie to itself and is directly observing the phenomena, and the individual consciousness that creates a sense of abstract idea, but it seems that it's not always in focus. It seems that a projector, how would I say this, is if this human form, how we are physically present in one modality of view, existential view, is a projection of a greater intelligence. So what that means is we are put on this wall and there's a movie playing, which is the movie of our life, and we are aware of it, but we are also aware through the lens of the projection and also the nature of the light, and also the ability to turn the projector on and off, and also the ability to see who designed the first projector. Your consciousness is boundless. But what you become conscious of, and in a sense you develop a sense of unknown to by not trusting an aspect of life. It is very rude when existence has allowed you to exist in any way you're inspired to, but certain ideas are not letting you to do so. What that means is embarrassment must be confronted with non-existence. You must see the nature of impermanence. What that means is even that our children are no longer children. They must become aware of impermanence, because every action is crucial. And when you begin to see that we're temporal beings, you begin to wonder, how can I contribute to this world, and how have I contributed? And so a story goes, but you will see that the greatest contribution is a sincere and honest one. The greatest contribution is one that knew itself. So the world is not asking you to be a hero, even though in much of our media is, much of how knowledge is framed is. But you must see that the heroic act is you to see that even though you have been raised in a certain way, you must go back. You must remember. You must be self-aware and go back in your remembrance and see why you allowed certain ideas to stand in the way they are standing now in your consciousness. You see, it's very crucial that you kind of be aware that you are not a thinker. You are aware of thought, and the concept of a thinker is a thought in which you're aware of. But you are an awareness that is also beyond the bounds of thought, because there is a clarity in how you can pay attention to how you're paying attention, that it is vast. It's as if two mirrors are put in front of one another and you're seeing the infinite projection in every idea, because the ideas, you are being aware of it in your, how do I say it, nature of being. So when I noticed when life asked me or put me in a situation I don't know what to do, when I tried to do something, it seemed I didn't trust my being. But when I just was, life adjusted around me, because life cannot ignore the sincerity that naturally expresses itself. What that means is you're not here to be kind to make someone happy in some degree, you know. You are here to be you in this universe. You are here to be an existential presence. So I noticed that I was walking in a garden, and we have this very beautiful cottage in Iran, and I was just walking by this very nice river and these trees, you know. And for a minute I was looking at the garden and I was like, whoa, have I been ignoring the vastness of the phenomena of the spectrum of uniqueness of three-dimensional form? And I began to look at the flowers, you know, and I just wondered, just like how those flowers, in the moment that they were planted and they were sprouted, it's as if everything in manifestation was intended to be manifest. What that means is existence cannot know non-existence when its existence is with the intention to exist. So non-existence will be an illusion, and we find that in many ancient texts have said the concept of suicide is of a repetitive cycle. And it's because it is not about you. It is about the awareness that is moving, the life that is flowing through your eyes. Don't make yourself so complex that you gotta use a bridge the wrong way. You must find the heart of hearts, and that means just look at how naturally your heart is living. Look at how naturally you're breathing. Even though, let's say, if you didn't have to learn a single thing, just by being aware of how your body is, by how your breathing is, by how life is, you will know and function. Self-awareness is when you're looking at the self of selves to see nothing there, no thing there. For when words try to touch worlds, we are found with many poetry books. However, the greatest poetry is the one that does not need to be written. The greatest poetry is found in the inspiration of the action of the being. What that means is there have been some moments where I have valued certain things more than others, certain actions, and then I've seen certain beings do the same actions and my value was totally wrong. And so I noticed there is an elusive comparison here, because how can we compare? Because when I say the word apple, some people are seeing Eve's apple and some people are seeing Newton's apple. And so what is unifying this? And some have thought, is it the apple? And no. Is it the seeds of the apple? No. Is it the tree that kept the apple there? No. Is it the 007 insect who kind of bit the stem of the fruit that fell? You know, is it that? No. It is the moment of awareness to this idea, as we are now collectively doing. In our ability to accept an individuality, there is a greater collective leap. What that means is if the bullies of this world immediately turned around their gaze, they will be an efficiency that will be man's greatest ally through a transcendence that is unshaped. Blessings to the being that remembered all presence is grace. All presence is all personality. It is all manifestation. It is all that can be known. The mystic has sat down and opened his wings of silence and stillness, and he has flown through all movements and noise to see that the dreamer was never asleep. Imagination is not imagination. There is much to explore. Take the existential responsibility of exploring your consciousness, exploring how you are aware of who you are. What that means is it might seem a bit too simple out of our very cool complexity, but trust me, what you allow yourself is the greatest contribution to the world. And this allowance is not just one that is aware of form. You are finding the beauty in the projection. You are finding the hollowness that is suggesting the greater multidimensional intelligence. So it will flow. Intuition will always guide you to the home that you know. And in our exploration of how ideology is present, we see when we look out, there's an objective view. when we look in, there's a subjective consideration, then there's this unknown aspect. And so we are seeing the edge of our knowledge. But then we begin to see, when we put our knowledge down, what do we know? And we see we can know anything. And so this is what we find perhaps to be the most beautiful human trait, that of novel exploration, that of just an awareness to a new moment of manifestation. For the spheres of thought have known themselves beyond space and time, the pilots of consciousness. Were aware of all elevations. What that means is, you should not just be aware of how the hierarchy is, and how the hierarchy expands into infinite possibilities of different structures. So on some aspect, your mind has to acknowledge that individuality is moving towards infinite understanding, and so that is how our technologies are evolving. But you must also recognize that that is how our tools are evolving. So let us take the most simple notion, that phone in your pocket is a tool. It is not you, you know. But where it's evolving, it seems that that tool could be connected to you. So it is very important then to be aware that in one aspect, technology is shaking up individuality to find itself in more collective ways physically in regards to the physical plane. But in how you become aware, you see what is inspiring evolution. And so it seems that man's next evolution is to be the other side of his inspiration. So the next step is nothing with of a man. It's man being his self-awareness beyond his physical body. So that moment where we notice ourselves to be individual in the mirror, that moment where man, the first, let's say, human being looked in the mirror, you know, the first mirror that was made, and just saw the world behind him, you know, and he noticed that he was a separate being, even though he was standing still in that mirror. He was a separate being, he could recognize it. Similarly now, man is to recognize himself through the emptiness that a very direct experience of form shows. What that means, stop Googling lions and just roar. It is within you. It will come when a sense of opposition wakes you up. Many of the greatest beings here, in their earliest points in life, are shaken by life. They are shaken. What that means is they are going towards a certain part of the mountain, and it's as if something pushes them down. And they're like, why? Why does this life have to push me down when everyone is climbing? And you begin to see that that is not an invitation to begin creating ideas of hate. That is an allowance. You are gifted with a new way. Be aware of the nature of how construction is present and deconstruction present, and a sense of change. And within this sense of change, which is a dynamic state, it is a transcendental state. What that means is, just like the movie, on one level, you know, we're seeing the TV, and on another level, we can pause it and see snapshots of it, you know. So we are moving beyond this beyond frames. And now how Mr. Within finds that it will be revealed to man in his subtler planes, as humanity, as collectively, just stop seeing. What that means is, visualize for a second a world. Visualize in an instant a world that every human being innately knows that it is alive for humanity. So what that means is the whole species has united to such a transcendent degree that we are aware that we are not separate, that it was all 360 degrees, and even spiraling into newer dimensions. Abstraction in your existential confrontation will have its own natural expression based on the steps you've taken as a being. But you must also recognize that in anything that life gives you, it is giving you a moment to be aware of all of it. And in that moment where you're aware of all of it, very selflessly, just flow. Just begin doing the actions and trusting your simplest knowing. Trust your simplest knowing. That is all you need. You don't need to think that you need to be a rocket scientist. Because a lot of rocket scientists don't really get to sit on the rockets they make. You know? So we want you to find Mr. Within through all that is. Find that sense of existential and cosmic intelligence that is present in all that you see. Find all that you see to be the dance of starlight in your eyes. And in a moment, as humanity smiles through every human being, peace was never something we needed to declare or write in words. In each human being's eyes, we would see peace. In every human being's presence, we would see a love for humanity. And so there will not be disturbance, but a very slow down of things. What that means is many people will begin detaching from the system of lifestyle they have been living, the routines, and just observing it from a distance, as if for a second you're getting off, getting off the vehicle that you've been driving this whole life and just observing it, And so when Mr. Within suggests being still and silent in nature and observing your being, it is suggesting that you for an instant get out of this vehicle of ideology and consideration and self-talk you have, which seems to be making you so depressed or stressed, or even putting someone there to be so stressed and depressed, and just step out of the vehicle for a second. Just be aware of your breathing. Don't think about anything. Just be aware of your breathing and how you're in nature. And begin to feel the ocean waves of bliss. Imagination is not imagination, but your knowing is clear beyond identification.